The rain fell softly against the window, tracing crooked paths that reflected the city lights. Michael had always liked that. The steady sound of rain made him feel as if the world, for a few minutes, went silent along with him. It was an ordinary Friday. So ordinary that, if fate had any mercy, it would have stayed that way. He was finishing a report at the office. An accounting analyst, the kind of man people describe as reserved, polite, predictable. He liked precision. On his desk, every object had its place. His wristwatch showed 7:42 p.m. when he shut down the computer and gathered his folder. At home, his wife Laura and their 2-year-old daughter Alice were waiting, the only part of the world he truly understood. The apartment smelled of floral perfume and warm milk. Alice was asleep in her crib, her brown hair sticking to her forehead, her chest rising and falling gently. Michael watched her for a moment with a small, almost shy smile. That was where his life made sense. On the couch, his wife's phone lit up. A simple notification, or it should have been. He wasn't the jealous type, he trusted her. But something made him pick up the device. Maybe his analytical habit, maybe just boredom. He opened the messages. And the world began to crack. First a name. Then scattered phrases. Times, dates, laughter. She's staying with your mom, right? Then I'll meet you at the same place. The same place. He scrolled further. Mom said she'll watch her love. You have no idea how much I missed you. Then the audio. A man's voice mocking. I already talked to my mom, you can drop the kid off here. I'll be waiting at the motel. The floor seemed to disappear. Michael stood frozen, the phone burning in his hands. He scrolled through old messages, pictures from trips, affectionate captions. Everything now sounded fake, rehearsed. Sweet lies, he thought. In the days that followed, there were no screams, no confrontations. Michael just observed. He'd leave work early, follow from a distance, confirm what the phone had already revealed. The routine of betrayal was almost methodical. Wednesdays and Fridays always at the same time. Their daughter stayed with the lover's mother. The world had become a stage, and he, the spectator of a filthy play. He slept little. Sometimes he stared at himself in the mirror, trying to understand when he'd stopped being someone real. His gaze looked like that of a stranger. No one noticed. At work he remained punctual, polite. In the building he greeted neighbors. But inside him, something grew, a cold emptiness that replaced love with calculation. One night, sitting at the kitchen table, he spread the evidence out like pieces of a puzzle. Every photo, every message, every audio file. All documented. And in the center, the picture of his daughter smiling, the only clean piece on the board. Michael opened the black notebook he used for work. On the first blank page he wrote slowly. Life is a theater, and everyone acts with their fake smiles and sweet lies. He stared at the sentence for a long time. It felt familiar, a kind of logic, as if the world finally made sense. He didn't see himself as a victim, but as an awakened observer. In the following days he started a new habit. He tested people. Asked small questions, simple ones, just to see if they'd lie. The coworker who claimed to be sick but came back tanned. The neighbor who swore she'd never spoken ill of anyone. Everyone lied. And every time he noticed it, a chill ran through him. Not anger, but certainty. One afternoon he found Laura on the balcony. The sun was gilding her hair. "Do you love me?" he asked, as if throwing the question into the wind. She smiled, surprised. "Of course I do." The smile hung in the air. Michael returned it with an empty stare. "That's good," he said simply and walked away. That night he didn't sleep. The city slept, but he stayed awake, staring at his reflection in the window. The rain had returned, and each drop felt like a cut. For the first time he felt peace in thinking about absolute silence. Outside life went on. Cars, laughter, promises. Inside him, something had changed forever. Michael understood that truth, once discovered, doesn't set you free, it destroys you. And it was in that moment, as the clock struck 3:14 a.m., that he stopped being just a wounded man. That was the birth of something new, something that would wait for the right moment to emerge. Not the monster from stories, but the judge of lies. Time passed, but the emptiness did not. To anyone who saw him, Michael was still the same. The punctual accounting analyst, calm-spoken and expressionless. But inside him, the silence had become something else, a form of order, a flawless calculation. In the months following the discovery of the affair, he had become an observer of human behavior. At the office, he listened to conversations without seeming interested. He heard coworkers lie about small things, schedules, meetings, relationships, and noticed how lying was natural, almost instinctive. And then he began to test it. He'd ask obvious questions just to watch reactions. The averted eyes, the hesitation, the fake smile. It was almost scientific. One afternoon he overheard a conversation that stayed in his mind. Carla, a colleague from his department, married for 8 years, spoke on the phone in a low, conspiratorial tone. "I told you my husband's traveling, love." Michael, in the next room, pretended to review reports. She hung up laughing, fixed her hair, and when she crossed him in the hallway she smiled. "Everything okay, Michael?" "Always," he replied in that neutral tone. That "always" was the word he used when he didn't want to lie. That night he couldn't sleep. Carla's words echoed in his mind. Her perfume still lingered in the air, sweet and irritating. The pattern repeated itself, the same lies, the same disguises. And then something inside him aligned. It wasn't anger. It was logic. If the world was a theater of fake smiles, someone had to close the curtains. In the days that followed, Michael began to follow her discreetly. The lover was a manager from another company, also married. He saw them together, took photos, kept everything, a new dossier of hypocrisy. And when he was certain, he arranged the meeting. He called from the office number, his voice calm, professional. "Carla, could we talk for a moment? I need to review some figures from last quarter." She agreed without hesitation. They met in the office building late at night. He pretended to review spreadsheets. The air conditioner hummed softly. In the middle of their conversation he looked up. "Do you love your husband, Carla?" She laughed, nervous. "What kind of question is that, Michael?" "Of course I do." He simply observed her. "Are you sure?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" "Because I know you're lying." Silence fell heavy. Her face lost all color. Before she could react, he closed the door, locking it with a precise movement. "I just want to ask you one question," he said. "It's simple." She stepped back, frightened. "Michael, what is this? Just answer me. Do you cheat on your husband?" Her eyes trembled. "No, of course not." He nodded slowly. "I warned you." There was no scream. No struggle. The muffled sound lasted only a few seconds. When it was over, he took a deep breath, like someone finishing an inevitable task. Minutes later, he placed the small mirror he carried in his pocket over her body. He looked at his own reflection and whispered, "Life is a theater, and everyone acts with their fake smiles and sweet lies." Then he turned off the lights and left, unhurried. The next morning, a security guard found the body. The mirror beside the woman's face puzzled the police. No sign of theft, no sexual assault. Just a clean, cold, calculated death. The newspapers began to speculate. Ritual, crime of passion, methodical psychopath. A sensationalist reporter coined the nickname that would stick, the Mirrorist. Michael watched the news in silence. No trace of emotion. Only the sense that something had been corrected. For the first time since Laura's betrayal, he felt calm. In the days that followed, he tested other people. A neighbor who lied about where he spent his nights. A woman who pretended to be single. Each confirmed lie made him feel that the world still owed a debt. But it wasn't random. Michael didn't see himself as a killer, he saw himself as a judge. In his notebook he wrote down the pattern. Question. Truth equals life. Lie equals sentence. It was simple, direct, and fair, at least to him. At work, no one suspected a thing. The spreadsheets were still delivered on time. The discreet smile unchanged. But at night, the other side of Michael emerged, the one that no longer tolerated the theater of deceit. One night, he drove past the house where Laura lived with their daughter. The lights were on. From the car, he watched through the window as the little girl played on the floor, smiling, innocent. Laura was on the phone, laughing, the same laugh as before. Michael closed his eyes. The steering wheel trembled in his hands. For a moment, he thought of getting out of the car, of confronting her, of asking the one question that still destroyed him, "Is Alice my daughter?" But he didn't. The answer, true or not, was the abyss. He started the car and drove away, carrying the reflection of his own shadow in the rearview mirror. On the radio, the news spoke again about the Mirrorist, the killer who judged liars. Michael listened in silence, his lips almost forming a smile. He knew that this was only the first act, and the theater of the world had finally found its judge. A single night, when Michael almost begged for honesty. It was winter, and the Boston wind cut sharply through the cracks in the windows. Laura was in the kitchen, stirring her coffee when he arrived home early from work. The sound of the spoon against the cup seemed to be the only sound in the world. Michael placed his folder on the table and simply watched. On her phone screen, a notification blinked. Message from Rick, speech balloon. The name he had pretended not to see for months. "Who's Rick?" he asked, his voice calm. She turned slowly, surprised, her automatic smile in place. A classmate. I already told you. He stepped closer, eyes fixed. A classmate who calls you love? The silence that followed was the snap. Laura hesitated, and what she chose to say sealed their fate. Michael, you're being paranoid. Paranoid. The word echoed inside him like an unfair verdict. She still looked at him, trying to appear offended, but Michael no longer saw her. He saw only the chain of messages, photos and audios he had heard days before. Laughter, motel meetings, whispered promises, complicit lies. And the worst of all, the doubt about their daughter. He opened his laptop and turned the screen toward her. There were the screenshots, the photos, the times, everything. I calculated the timing, Laura. I know exactly the days you said you were at school. I know where you were, he said, his voice low, controlled, almost serene. And I know our daughter may not be mine. Laura went pale. Her hands trembled, eyes brimming with tears. Michael, listen, it's not what you think. He laughed. It's always that, isn't it? Everyone says it's not what it seems. For a moment he wanted to believe her. Wanted her to speak the truth, any truth even if brutal. But Laura averted her gaze and whispered, I don't want to talk about it. And that was when something inside him died. Not the love, that was already gone. It was the trust in the human word that crumbled. In the following days he slept on the couch. They no longer spoke. When Laura tried to start a conversation he only said, life is a theater. And everyone acts with their fake smiles and sweet lies. She cried but he didn't react. With each tear he saw only another attempt at manipulation, another scene in that rotten stage they called married life. A week later he left. He left the house, taking only the clothes on his back, the laptop and a small metal box. Inside he kept a photo of his daughter, a pen drive with the evidence and a pocket mirror, a gift from his mother years ago when she used to say, always look at yourself before judging others. But Michael had already crossed the line. In the months that followed he tried to resume his routine. Work was the only thing left. Spreadsheets calmed him. They were exact, predictable, with no room for lies. But the world around him seemed to mock him. Couples laughing in cafes, co-workers lying on the phone, neighbors with facades of smiles. It was during that time that his hatred for falsehood took shape. It was no longer just against Laura, but against everything she represented. To him, infidelity was the ultimate symbol of human corruption. Lies elevated to intimacy. And if lies were poison, then he would be the antidote. The first time he wrote this idea down was on a scrap of paper at work. Lies are the error. Truth is the sentence. I am the balance. Shortly after, he was called to court to sign the divorce. Laura was there, accompanied by her mother. She wore a light coat, the same perfume as always. When the judge asked them to confirm the agreement, she whispered, I'm sorry, Michael. He stared at her for long seconds, searching, perhaps, for a trace of sincerity. But she didn't meet his gaze. She only clutched the handkerchief, rehearsing a sorrow that sounded false. He signed and left without a word. Outside the courthouse, it was raining. Michael lifted his face and let the drops wash away his fatigue. Then he saw a couple kissing under the same umbrella. And he thought, how many of them are real? The hatred didn't come all at once. It arrived like a slow calculation. First the coldness, then the logic. Until one night, looking into the mirror, he noticed something different in his reflection. His eyes were calm, but there was a glint there, a kind of certainty. If the truth sets free, he murmured, then I will free the world, one liar at a time. And so the ordinary man died. Michael, the Mirrorist, was born, the invisible judge, the executioner of the false. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, an investigator named Daniel Prado received the first report on the murdered accountant case. Something intrigued him, the mirror left on the body. A symbol, perhaps. A code. And although he didn't know it yet, fate was beginning to bring the two together. The man who judged liars and the man obsessed with the truth. Two sides of the same invisible line. The cold in the homicide department office was biting. Daniel Prado stared at the files spread across the desk. The case of the murdered accountant wasn't the first, but it was the starting point. The mirror left on the body, the precision of the crime, the silent pattern, everything pointed to someone calculating, intelligent. He had studied dozens of killer profiles, but none so meticulous, none so morally rigid. Meanwhile, Michael walked the streets of Boston like an ordinary man. Dark suit perfectly aligned, folder of reports in hand. The same man who, months ago, silently signed spreadsheets, now carried a gaze that hid nothing. Every step was a calculation. Every gesture an invisible message. That night, Michael found himself watching Laura and Alice from across the street. His daughter played on the apartment rug. Laura laughed on the phone, carefree. Michael's heart raced. There was no anger. No desire for revenge. There was only one question he still couldn't ask. Is Alice my daughter? And yet he didn't approach. He knew that if the truth were spoken, it would be a sentence, not for him but for the world he had built in his mind. Remaining in the shadows was, for now, the only way to maintain control. Meanwhile, Daniel had begun tracing Michael's pattern. He confronted each victim with a direct question. Lie equals death. Truth equals mercy. The Mirrorist did not act on impulse nor out of anger. He administered justice according to his own code. Daniel felt a shiver. This was the kind of killer you respect even while hating him. That night, Daniel was reviewing reports when he received an anonymous call. He's going to try again. The voice said nothing more. But Daniel understood. The Mirrorist was about to strike. On the other side of the city, Michael had already identified his next target. A married man hiding an affair with a colleague at work. He studied every movement of the man, every fake smile, every deleted message. The approach was slow, silent. When they finally faced each other, he asked the ritual question. Do you cheat on your wife? The man hesitated, averted his eyes. Michael immediately recognized the lie. The chill running through his bones was not hate. It was justice. And with clinical precision, he carried out what he deemed necessary. The mirror was left beside the body, reflecting the white ceiling of the apartment and the judgment of the one who had dared to lie. After the crime, Michael drove to a nearby cafe. The city news spoke of Daniel Prado, the investigator who had begun to notice patterns but could not yet connect the dots. Michael smiled faintly, a shadow of satisfaction. Not for killing, but for maintaining control. For confirming once again that the world was a theater of falsehoods. That same night he returned to watching Laura and Alice. The little girl slept, hugging a teddy bear. Laura read a book beside the bed, her face illuminated by the soft light of the lamp. Michael took a deep breath and for the first time, whispered to himself, "You are the only truth I have left." He knew he was approaching a limit. The desire to confront Laura was intense, but something held him back. His daughter. Alice was the last fragment of innocence, the only barrier between him and total darkness. And paradoxically, it was this barrier that kept him alive. Daniel continued his investigation, analyzing patterns, interviewing acquaintances of the victims. Each mirror found, each small note left by the body, each detail of the crime began to form a psychological map. He understood that the killer was meticulous, rational but also deeply emotional. Someone who hated lies with the same intensity he loved the truth. Then came the clue that changed everything. Michael had, without realizing it, left an accounting detail in one of the first victim's spreadsheets. A digital signature hidden among numbers and calculations. Daniel realized the killer had a technical profession, someone who worked with precision and discipline. And for the first time he understood the magnitude of the man he was hunting. Meanwhile, Michael watched Laura and Alice's life from his car. The rain began to fall again. The reflection in the rearview mirror showed his own face, cold, calm, calculating. He smiled to himself, knowing the game had only just begun. The last mirror had yet to be shattered. And the invisible line between Michael and Daniel Prado was about to become the battleground for a silent, deadly, and inevitable duel. Truth frees but first it destroys, murmured Michael before disappearing into the night of Boston, leaving only the reflection of his own judgment behind. The dawn over Boston was pale and heavy with mist, as if the city itself sensed what was about to unfold. Detective Daniel Prado stood before the evidence board, the wall covered in photos, dates, and strings of connection. The pattern was complete. The mirror man now had a name, a face, a life. Michael Harris. Accountant. Model employee. Father. Betrayed husband. A man who had turned pain into doctrine and guilt into justice. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He knew what came next, the final confrontation. But beneath the weight of duty there was something else. A strange sense of respect for the killer who never murdered for pleasure, but out of a twisted faith in truth. Meanwhile, Michael sat in his car across from the house that had once been his home. Across the street he watched Laura walking their daughter Alice to school. The girl's laughter cut through the cold morning like a fragile melody. Michael closed his eyes, trying to record that sound. He knew it would be the last time. On the passenger seat rested an envelope. Inside, a letter. Addressed to Daniel Prado. Truth is not a right. It's a burden. And you, detective, are the only one capable of carrying it. When you find me, don't see a monster. See the reflection of what the world hides. He placed the envelope on the dashboard and took a deep breath. In his mind, the decision was already made. He wouldn't run. He wouldn't lie. He would simply finish what he had begun. At 10:42 a.m., Daniel received an alert. Surveillance cameras had spotted Michael's car near the harbor. Without hesitation, he drove there. The wind whipped his face, carrying the sharp scent of salt. Through the fog and steel containers, Daniel saw him, standing calmly beside his car, wearing the same dark suit, waiting. "Michael Harris," Daniel called out, gun drawn. "It's over." Michael raised his hands, unafraid. "Nothing ever ends, detective. It only changes form. You killed 6 people. They had families. They had chances. They lied," Michael said evenly. "Lies are the oldest virus in humanity. I only stopped the infection." Daniel stepped closer. "And who gave you the right to judge?" Michael smiled faintly. "The same society that lies every day and still demands justice. I just removed the mask." Silence fell between them. Distant sirens wailed through the mist. Daniel knew he could end it right there. One shot. Simple. Plain. But something in him hesitated. There was truth in the man before him, warped, broken, but truth nonetheless. Michael took a step closer. "Do you know the difference between us, Daniel?" The detective kept the gun steady, saying nothing. "You search for truth for others. I searched for it for myself." He gave a hollow smile. "And it destroyed me." Then Michael pulled something from his pocket, a small round mirror. He held it up slowly, reflecting Daniel's face. "Look closely, detective. Every man has a limit. Once he crosses it, the reflection never comes back the same." For a moment, Daniel lowered his weapon, almost instinctively. And then came the sharp click. But it wasn't a gun fired at him. Michael had turned the trigger on himself. The mirror fell to the ground, cracking in silence. Daniel rushed forward, kneeling beside him, trying to stop the inevitable. Blood mixed with the rain that had begun to fall. In Michael's fading eyes there was peace. "She," he whispered, "is innocent. Make sure Alice never learns what a lie is." Those were his last words. Daniel stayed there for a long time, motionless. The shattered mirror reflected the gray sky, and for an instant, his face merged with Michael's. 2 different men bound by the same obsession with truth. Days later, Daniel filed the final report. He wrote only one line. The mirror man believed truth would set him free. But he forgot that sometimes freedom is the cruelest punishment. That night, Daniel placed the cracked mirror in his desk drawer. He looked at his own reflection and wondered if he still saw the man he once was. Outside, the city slept. But somewhere in Boston, under the cold glow of the street lights, the mirror's reflection still shimmered. As if truth, even in death, never stopped looking back.